Hey there, Tyler Osby with the Tyler Osby team at Fairway Independent Mortgage, creepily walking towards the camera. On a more serious topic, the coronavirus is going to get worse before it gets better. I think everybody knows that. But what I wanted to talk about today is what you should know about your personal finances as it, associates with the hardships that could come as a result of the coronavirus. And you don't have to get sick for this to directly impact you, which is why the stock market is really having a tough couple weeks. Um, if you lose your job, paying your bills is going to become difficult. And I want to kind of give you some advice today on what you can do if you find yourself in that situation, and then also make sense of what happens next. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this quick, IG video. That being said, if you're in a position where you lose your source of income and you're not going to be able to pay your bills, the number one piece of advice I can give you is you need to communicate with your creditors. It's the one thing nobody does, but everybody should do. And if you communicate with your creditors, hey, I am in some trouble and I can't pay these bills, they're all going to have their own standard operating procedure. Some will say, hey, no problem. Let's get you back on your feet. Let's work out some kind of like a deferment of payment or something. Others might say, hey, we'll suspend accruing interest. What can you pay? They might try to work out some kind of a payment arrangement. And then from time to time, you're going to run into somebody who says, sorry, but like your next payment's due on the 1st. I hope you can figure it out. And you just need to make those calls to figure out where you stand with each financial institution. I think you'll be shocked. Even now, already, it's March 19th, and as I'm recording this, there's no government assistance on this stuff yet. So people who've been calling, though, have been finding that a lot of creditors are just happy to be communicated with right now, and they're working out different payment arrangements to help offset the hardship that's coming as a result of those individuals' inability to work. Okay, so that's the first piece, is what to do. Just call, okay? Just call. And I would recommend, like, if you haven't, get a notepad of like what you got for expenses and what you work out with each individual creditor, so you can figure out how much you can kind of squeeze it down. What I imagine happening, not sharing from personal experience, but let's say you had $2,000 in expenses. I think if you make some of those phone calls, you could quickly cut that in half, if you work that out with each individual lender that you owe money to. So I hope that's helpful. And if you have some experience with that, send me a DM and let me know what you find out, because I would like to share that with other people who are watching this video just like you. The second part that I wanted to talk about is like, what is the impact of this to your credit, and how can you manage that to have less of an impact on your credit as you go through this process, okay? So a lot of people think that if they fall one day late on any kind of a payment, whether it be a credit card, a car loan, or a mortgage, that it's going to report negatively to their credit bureau. And in almost every case, that's not the case. What typically happens is that creditor will hit you with a late fee and maybe additional interest, but it's not going to report to the credit bureau almost any time except for when you go over 30 days late. So, for example, let's say I've got a bill coming up. Like I said, it's March 19th right now. Let's say April 1st, I have my mortgage payment due, which I do. If April 1st comes and goes and I haven't paid it yet, I have a late payment on my mortgage if it's not paid until after the 15th. And that's generally the case for you as well. If that's the case, on the 16th, am I going to have to worry about a late pay on my credit bureau? Surprisingly, no. They don't actually report anything to the credit bureau until I'm 30 days late. I have to be 1 full month late before they even, tell the credit bureau. The same thing's true with most auto loans and most credit cards. There are exceptions, so you might check into it, but for the most part, 16 years of doing this, I've heard of like 2 exceptions. Usually 30 days is the rule of thumb. So if you happen to find yourself in a position where just cash flow wise, you can't pay it until like 16 days after the due date, as long as you're in communication with that creditor, I wouldn't get too worked up about it. It's probably not going to be a negative impact to your credit. However, if you get late, some of these creditors, like credit cards specifically have something called a universal default clause, which is where it gets a little scary. And depending on the agreement with the creditor, it could come in when you're just like a day late. Not only would you have a late fee, but they raise your interest rate. But like, let's say you have a credit card with Chase and you miss the payment with Chase. Well, then let's say you have another card with Capital One that wasn't late, but they are notified through the credit bureaus that you were late on Chase. Now they're going to raise your interest rate on your credit card as well. They call that the universal default clause. That is the scariest thing when it comes to credit cards, and the thing you want to really be ultra careful with if you can't work out some kind of an arrangement by making the call saying, hey, I'm impacted by this coronavirus thing. Or if you're watching this video months later, this could happen with anything, major financial expenses that were unexpected, for example. But that universal default clause, man, that is where things get hairy in a hurry. So be careful with that. When you're late, though, and you're over 30 days late, that's when it's reporting to your credit bureau. Man, I'm feeling like super somber compared to how I usually am on video, so sorry. But when you're late on those things, it then will reflect your 30 days late. And keep in mind, if you're not really vigilant about making sure you get caught back up, it becomes what's called a rolling late payment. A lot of people don't know this, but if you don't catch it up, you're going to consistently be 30 days behind until you get it caught up. And that will completely wreck your credit report. One 30-day late is bad. Rolling 30-day lates is really bad. So be very mindful of that if you find yourself in a situation of hardship that you fall behind. If there's any way you can work out the cash flow with a budget, and I highly recommend doing this on paper when it happens, if it happens, you know when you have the money to free up to go pay those bills, and try everything you can in your power to keep that on schedule. I hope that makes sense. Now, as far as when things go really bad, okay, which is what I remember back, I've been doing this for 16 years. I know I don't look it, but it's been a while. And I went through the subprime meltdown, and this frankly takes me back to that. Had a lot of really hard conversations with people where they were scared to death. And I'll be honest, like some people watching this video are terrified. You don't know what the hell to do. And I want you to know you're not alone. There's a lot of people who are also scared. And my hope is with this video, I can give you some confidence so you know what to expect. So what about like the worst case scenario, right? Who cares about my credit? Who cares about the fees? When am I going to have to worry about losing stuff, right? So with a repossession of a car to start, typically, I think that's a 3 to 4 month period of missing payments before they start hunting you down to get your car. But again, if you communicate and say, hey, this is the situation, hopefully they'll give you some kind of a hardship deferment and you're okay. If they won't, know that you probably have a 3 to 4 month period, unless you're in some kind of like a weird buy here, pay here situation that you have before you have to worry about a repo. But if you do end up getting it repoed or you give the car back, know that whatever it sells for at auction, they take that and they go against what you owe, and the difference you get stuck with on a collection. So the easy way out is definitely to give them the car, but if they sell it for a lot less, you're still going to end up with that shortage. So remember that. Second thing, homes. Losing your home is a very serious thing. Nobody wants to go through it. I don't wish it on my worst enemy. You have a lot of time before you have to worry about losing your home, and you should know that. You can live in your home for 4 months without making payments before you have any kind of a foreclosure action taken on you here in Iowa. So know that you and your family are safe. It will typically take, no exaggeration, 1.5 years to 2 years for them to actually get you out of the house. Now, hopefully it would never come to this, but just know, like, while you and your family are hunkering down trying to figure shit out, like, nobody's going to come and take you or take your home from you, okay? You've got plenty of time to work it out, and frankly, the government will probably come through with support to make that all work out here eventually. I know they're working on that. So hopefully, man, that got deep really quick, and I hope it's helpful to give hope for people who need it and give you some context to share with other people. But if you have any questions, any stories even of what you're finding, send me a DM. I'm always here to help, all right? So I'm thinking of you, and stay well, okay? I'll talk to you later.